Call to order, roll call vote, or roll call vote.
Want to do the pledge of allegiance first, or do you want to do that?
Do that at the 7 o'clock.
Okay. Councilmember Compton,
Excused.
Ellen Baker,
She's on her way.
Farrell,
She's on her way.
Happy,
Here.
Keller,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Mayor Fallon.
Here. All right, any additions or amendments to the agenda? Purpose of the 23-24 budget follow-up questions and discussions. At the last meeting, and there were some questions Councilman Happy brought up, and so I wanted to make sure that we set some time. This isn't clearly enough time to like solve everything, but at least we can have a discussion on what your questions were.
And I think it's good to put this officially on record for what those questions are, although I don't know if there's been a movement from like budget meetings as well. Yeah, so these are just the things that I wrote down. If anybody else wrote anything else down, I think it's probably worthy of discussion as well. I can quickly go through all of my notes, then we can go back and talk about them in more depth. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sounds like a good.
Some of these are things we already found the answers to. So for example, the TRT fund is using that for fireworks. I wrote that down and we already found out we can't. Review / increase planning fees. Raise EMS support fees. And so we talked about commercial versus residential. So big difference between a company like Thunder Island versus a new residential account.
Just to butt in there, on the sheet that I provided, it's got the breakdown of the fees on there.
And then we talked about, Bernard brought up the idea of based on a percentage of the total square feet. And current fees are $6 residential, $9 commercial. Is that what you have on your sheet as well? Commercial.
Somewhat, yeah.
Oh, got it. Yeah, so it's out of the city is $9, in the city is $7, in the city residential is $6, out of the city is $8.
Yeah.
EMS admin overhead. I think that was something that came up during the budget review process, was that there's no money available to actually have any funds in the EMS fund to cover the admin overhead, so we had to zero that out, and that was an interest decision.
Can I clarify?
Yes.
According to my bill, I pay 7.76 cents per kilowatt hour.
Oh, we're talking about the EMS fee.
Oh,
Should be-
sorry,
should be
I'm way
a
off.
flat.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
All right.
Electrical department staffing was another issue that we talked about, contractors versus hiring. I think it would be amazing if we could, as a city, provide other, like, really high income wages for some pretty important jobs.
Yeah.
And as Bernard brought up, we could get a lot, you know, he said that he used our staff to provide, you know, do a bunch of other bigger projects during their downtime. Right now with our contractors, we really only get the things done that we're hiring them to do, but nothing else. So that was an interesting discussion, but really the challenge from our electrical department is just finding people to fill those positions. Yeah, and that's been difficult, but I think Butch, you asked some good questions about Skamania and how are they staffed and how are they finding people, right? I think you were asking about that. My memory serves me correct. Was that you?
I don't know if it was me or Sean.
Yeah,
I think I did though.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth looking into. Now, what are they offering? I think I know that they talked about the benefits being better for Skamania County than what we're able to offer.
Their wages are quite a bit higher.
And wages are.
Well, I mean, our wages aren't bad. We're in the ballpark.
We're now in the ballpark.
Well, for that one, it's through the union contract. It's always gonna be in the ballpark. But it is those retirement benefits, health benefits that we don't have.
And that, I mean, that's a big topic right there for us to discuss at some other point, but, you know, we're spending a lot of money and, you know, we look at that analysis of, you know, what we're paying for contract to have a contractor come out and provide the service and what it would cost us to hire people in-house. It's comparable, but the amount of time we actually have people here is much, much less. So our overall, what we're able to perform is less. And then Bernard also brought up managing contracts, and just just something that just happens by itself, but it does put additional load on city staff as well. City Light, South Bank versus City Light, $200,000 deficit for South Bank. Deposits, $300 for residential and commercial. Should we change more for commercial? I mean, the idea behind it, I think that that's worthy to discuss too. I'd be curious what other people think about this, but I feel like the idea behind the deposit is that someone flakes out on their last bill, we have a deposit to cover that. And I'd be curious, I think the deposit should be, reflective of what the average monthly bill would be for that account.
Well, by the time we actually shut their power off, they're about a month and a half cycle in, so we'd be about 2 months out.
Yeah, so on a commercial account, especially as we're talking about these data centers, we could be stuck with a huge bill if someone were to.
Exactly.
That's part of the rate study as well, to talk
Okay,
about that,
that's
so.
excellent.
Because there's going to be, with the rate study, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's to implement measures, so we're covered, so we're not on the whole thing.
Cool, so that would be also include deposits.
Yeah.
It's been a while price since we've.
Something, there's gotta be something that we, not just, 1 month or something like that when it comes to data centers, so. But, for businesses that use quite a bit more, like maybe breweries or things like that, I'm sure their bills are over 300.
Yeah, I'm sure we could rewrite, I'll be curious to see what they suggest, but it seems like that should be kind of based on the projected monthly bill, based on
Right.
usage is really to make, just like your deposit for a rental, it's kind of based on what the rent is. I think it makes sense.
For high energy users, we would probably have it built into their contract.
Yes, it'd be in the
So-
contract.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have a much higher
Deposit.
deposit.
That's a good point. So you're thinking that would be different than for other commercial accounts that wouldn't be large enough to really warrant a contract.
Which at this point is nobody over 1 megawatt. And I've called around that 1 megawatt threshold, so we're not alone there.
Is Bear Mountain a megawatt?
I don't think so. The only actual, I'd have to double check, but they have multiple accounts, is also the thing. We have one business in town that is under the large industrial user, and it's Bison Trails, the Bitcoin company, or Stumptown, or whatever, I can't remember which one.
They originally started off as Oregon Mines.
Yeah, which I think they're still listed under the utility bill, but their actual
Business name.
doing business as name has changed, yeah.
And they use what, 2?
I think just under 2, I'd have to double check, it's quite a bit.
Mhm.
Bank fees also came up. What are we paying now? And then, of course, looking at the cost of switching and should we look at, getting some comps, and then bathroom and overlay park cost versus revenue.
Yeah, which we've already had that discussion even a couple months ago on overall park is, we had to replace the sink a couple weeks ago because they broke the sink. And then the paper towel dispenser keeps getting busted into, people are staying in the paper towels, is it worth it? I've gotten the paperwork on the grant to see if we're required to actually operate the thing year round, or we can just do it during the busy season, and I haven't really had a chance to dive into it, so.
It's really unfortunate because the people that are breaking it are not the people that are the PCT and through hikers and.
Right.
Yeah.
Why was that put in, can anybody provide some historical context of where that project evolved from and why?
I believe it was a tourism, I believe it's tourism and the shower specifically for PCT.
Yeah.
I personally would hate to see it go.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the few visitor resources we have.
Yeah, it evolved from the fact that a lot of the businesses downtown were not providing restrooms for non-customers, so the need was there for it.
You have
It
history on
evolved from the Gorge Hubs project, which was that cycling through the Gorge project, and the grants stemmed from that to build the facility, and you could customize the facility, I think, to what you wanted, if you wanted showers. And we originally had a bicycle kind of repair and air area, I don't know if that's gone.
I think it's there, the tools keep getting stolen from it.
Yeah, or, where people fix their bikes there, and that's how it evolved.
So personally, I think it's more of a security issue, rethinking that than taking it away, because some things happen.
I mean, we have homeless people that will lock themselves in there at night.
And I think that's, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like it's probably not the tourists, that are
No,
vandalizing
breaking
our
the
bathroom
sinks.
and breaking the sink and,
Breaking the coin boxes off,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
So as we relook at, Pete, I did see an article this week I want to share with you, that there's actually a grant for businesses to put up Ring cameras. And this particular article was saying how that can lead to some false accusations or discriminations, but the purpose was for city security, so, two sides to a coin.
how does that?
I mean, we
sorry,
need
this
to,
is,
as we go ahead and look at security as, again, I certainly don't want to take away good things, because there are some folks doing bad things there.
It's unfortunate to punish the people that are doing the right thing,
Right.
because the few people that are doing the wrong thing, if we could figure out a way to
Right.
rein
Is
that
that-
in.
Spent time, having dinner like at Ale House, where you're looking out there, and I was amazed on how many people with young children use it, and they use it a lot. I mean, it's, especially during the summer. Who opens and closes it now?
Or we use publics, certainly it's.
So are we closing it at night?
Yeah, they will, one of them will go out at 9 o'clock each night and lock it.
It would be nice, do we own that property?
We do.
Eventually to have something there, a small visitor center, I mean, eyes on the ground. During business hours, something there. I don't know.
I know, it definitely is a challenge, and it's unfortunate that it's a small handful of people who are breaking the sinks and things like that. It's not the hikers, it's not,
For repairing those sorts of, that sort of damage, is it possible to use TRT funds for maintenance upkeep? Because I feel like there's no way that the revenue from the bathrooms is going to cover the cost.
it was
gosh,
never,
it's-
it was
it's an-
never meant to.
Yeah, it's an investment
No.
that we as a city are making to provide services for people that are visiting and
Mhm.
tourists. So with that in mind, it seems like it would be appropriate to have tourism dollars support the Overlook Park restrooms.
I think, I would also look at who the bathroom is actually supporting. And it's those businesses downtown.
Mhm.
That's where we need some sort of business tax that can be directed solely to the upkeep of that.
Do we not have a business tax at all for local businesses?
Nope.
And I would, Butch, on that note, I agree with you. Other small towns I've seen have a business registration, even if it's small. So there's a registry of businesses and, but yes, this is a good conversation to brainstorm. How do we, A, reduce homeless people staying there or damage to the area? B, do we have enough property there to add some small cart? C, would this apply, make us think about our business, tax or registration?
In Hood River, our business is based in Hood River, and we have to pay Hood River County, it's Hood River City property tax on any property we use to generate revenue. It's collected through the same way you pay your property taxes for residents.
Is it a urban renewal,
No, I don't believe it.
business improvement tax?
No, it's a business personal property tax, and it's a couple $100 a year, but something like that, Butch. I think if you have a fee that's for registration, then it's only something we collect once. It should be something that we're collecting revenue on an annual
It should
basis.
be yearly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because there are some costs that are being passed on to the city by the businesses. Like another good example is the trash can in front of the East Wind Drive-In. If you're sitting at the picnic tables, the most useful trash can is one that belongs to the city that we're dumping. So that's another example of ways that businesses are passing their operating expenses onto the city.
I do, in the city of Milwaukee, Oregon, I registered my consulting business every year, think it went up to maybe 140 every year, so that I could have that when I did my taxes. So every business was required, if you were having a business, when I moved here, since there was no such thing, I registered with the state of Oregon. Do you register in Hood River?
I don't know. We registered through the Secretary of State.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
But in the
That's
city of Milwaukee, and they would, for that, there was a business directory. And it was also shared with like the Boy Scouts, they would solicit and things, but that was all right.
Yeah, there's no, I don't think any sort of a registration fee or anything like licensing for annually for the business in Hood River. It's just. the-
So each city
In
did.
Portland, I had to register for my business license, and that was $200 a year. Plus I had to pay a business tax on money that I made and to the city. Plus you're also paying TriMet tax to my competitor.
Well, I think
That's
it's
really
something.
ironic, isn't it? I mean,
I think it's something to look into it, because it could help. I mean, the restroom was never built to make money, but it would be nice to not go backwards
yeah.
too much.
Do we know how much the Overlake Park restroom cost us last year?
I'd have to look.
We need to get those numbers. I mean, we're not talking a huge amount of money. I wanna be business friendly. And I wanna, you know, have an environment that encourages people to wanna start businesses here.
Yeah.
One of the ways we can do that is by having lower taxes and fees than other people around us. So I don't wanna tax people like crazy, but it would be nice to.
Right.
Even a flat business registration where the city takes out an administrative fee for registering them, and then the rest goes into upkeep of that.
What if we even asked them, like, is it possible we could structure it in a way that if they have a restroom that's available for customers or public, that they could get a credit?
Well,
Well, then that puts it, because some businesses, they have a restroom that they close at 4, or they're not open half the time. So that would be a loophole.
And
You know, that they would say, I have a bathroom, but yet they're not open as much as maybe a different business.
But I
And
guess
then
it's the issue I have is that the businesses that simply say, I'm sorry, you can't use our restroom. You know, and period,
Right.
and,
But that's common everywhere. I mean, you have to make a purchase to use the
well,
restroom.
it didn't used to be though. For some of the businesses here, they let non-customers use it. But now some of those businesses have changed ownership, and the rules for their restrooms have changed with it.
I'm sort of for customers using the restroom because that's an incentive for spending money there. And we do have, the gas station has a free bathroom.
Then
and
the
we-
Shell station,
Right, and we
the
do have,
Chevron does not.
Yeah, the Chevron doesn't allow you to use it.
but, and this is there, but I think it's bubbling up that issue of security and safety in our town and lack of patrol and lack of somebody saying, hey, what's going on?
it's really two issues, right? We got the covering the cost of the maintenance and upkeep of the bathrooms, and then security.
Can TRT funds help?
I'd have to look into it. I mean, on the surface, I don't see why not, but I'd have to look into it.
Because
If
tourism.
it was a tourism grant, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess it'd be nice, it'd be good to know hard numbers, like how much are we talking about? If we're talking $1,000 a year, it's really pretty, it's nothing compared to the printing for brochures or what, the other expenses we have.
I don't think it's a lot. I mean, I think like the sink they just put in was probably $400 or $500, which is probably more than the whole, it makes all year, so just on that, it's losing money. But I mean, we have staff that are going there early in the morning, opening the door, checking it multiple times a day, emptying the garbages, and then going, during the summer, going at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night and locking.
So is there any way to quantify the overall costs and overhead for operating?
We could guesstimate it, yeah, I mean, we could look at some receipts. It takes some digging, but we could, yeah.
Could you put on a lock that somebody could just lock from their phone? Well, I guess you've gotta make sure that there's nobody in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you could have an escape lock to where they can come out.
Yeah.
But once that door is closed, it's
Well, yeah.
it's
That's a
locked.
great idea, though. Like, our quick set drug bolts that we've got that are all Wi-Fi connected, you can lock it remotely.
But you need to, yeah, you can't have cameras in the bathroom.
No.
But on this note, briefly, I don't know if we have a lot of time, but at one point, we need to talk about the tourism committee, and there's been some concern, I'm hearing, that they're not sure how it is that we're spending money without having done goal setting with them. And while I know that we've checked with Ruben and we're within our means and we know the budget, that at one point, we do need to do goal setting with them and maybe share their advisory role and let them know that
I think that's a whole subject.
it is, but this is gonna be on
Right.
television and they're gonna hear it.
Right.
So I
We need
wanna
to-
say,
we do need to address it because in past administration, there's only a set of rules, but no one's ever read them, they don't know. So we need to get them on board with, here's the committee, here's how it's structured, here's when your reports are due, and things like that.
right,
So,
Sorry to interrupt, guys. I'm a little hard of hearing, and so it's difficult to follow what we're talking about, guys, with the crosstalk.
so we're actually in an active work session.
Yeah,
Yes, sorry, you probably didn't realize.
yes.
We're not paying attention.
Because we only have 9 minutes left of this list, what does council want me to focus on first to get research, get some feedback to you?
Well, the Overlook Park was we took, spent a few more minutes on that, and that one, if you could look at the last year, like, how much it costs. to repair things like
What
that.
are the biggest issues in your mind on this list, Jordan? I mean, some of these, bathroom at Overlook Park, is it
That's
really a big
minimal.
issue, like, is that?
Well, we just spent time on it, and
Yes.
so if that's something, the answer, if you could find out the cost.
Which do you think are the most impactful issues?
I'd say planning fees, different ways to spend TRT funding, and then, fire and EMS fees. I mean, we have to raise our income, or revenue, we don't have enough revenue as a city to get where we want to.
and I'm a big vote on the TRT funds as well as that. I think we need a joint work session with the tourism committee, so they know they're on board with this.
I would agree that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mhm.
And then I think along those lines with the conversation we we're just having about business taxes and business
Yeah.
fees,
Mhm.
how do we raise revenue?
Yeah,
So I guess my question is, so raising the fire and EMS, that seems like that's a vote to the people.
it would be,
Any of the planning stuff would be a vote to the people. So I think we need to have a larger conversation about how to generally raise revenue. What is it that we can do to raise revenue? I mean,
And I can see if we have to have each of these issues as separate ballot measures on the ballot.
yeah, it's all gonna fail.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's not gonna be perceived or welcomed very well, so I think that's a really good point to bring up, is how do we strategically look at raising revenue for the city?
yeah, we strategically plan which ones we want to present and how much, or we go for changing the charter that will then allow council to raise taxes, fees, and charges as needed.
You would have to have a vote for them to repeal that 1433.
Right,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all gonna have to come down to 2024.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, getting a game plan on how council wants to approach that.
mhm.
I think that's the larger conversation.
I agree, yes, I agree.
And
That should be started now, so that we're prepared for November. I mean, that's a year and a half out.
Yeah,
I agree, and I think our strategic planning consultants will also have some recommendations. for
yes, I
us.
think that will
I think
answer
we'll
some
get a lot of
Mhm.
questions on that.
Yeah.
Yes. Once we get that.
So does that answer your question about direction?
Sorry.
A little bit, yes, a little bit.
I mean, I think it's good to have, really, it's not about each of these individual issues, it's about the larger issue about the revenue.
And I do want to be mindful to stay, positive working with new businesses and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we do need to look at our planning and streamline things a little bit. So I know that, at the canoe club, it was $2,700 for planning. They didn't do any, there wasn't any, I saw the bill, from the planner, and there wasn't any structure change, they weren't building kitchens, they weren't doing anything. So I'm like, how in the heck can that be 2,700? I know everything in government's expensive, but.
Well, as we need to, it's a lot easier to,
Yeah,
you know, it's hard for a new business to pay that upfront.
right,
Whereas an operating business is more able to continue to pay.
Well, that was a change, that was a planned use change, or I don't remember the proper term. I mean, they have to do a big, huge
It was a
change.
conditional use.
Yeah, conditional use, that's what it is. That's a big deal.
Other cities don't necessarily do that upfront charge. So it is not as development friendly.
And
We're
so
gonna-
what's the conditional use permit? Who requires that?
It went against the zone of the building. So they had to get a conditional use of, so that they can do what they do with it.
I see, so that seems legitimate then. I mean, so what was the building zone for then?
I don't remember all
Well, so it's in public,
it's an incubator.
no, it's in the public zone. And so in that, there's specific things that can be without any kind of review. A restaurant, when it was TIB, and then the canoe clubs, it is now, is outside of that scope of pre-approved businesses or functions. And I don't remember what those pre-approved functions are, so.
That's part of the challenge, like, we don't know. So we just need to find out.
I can have John do some research on what other cities charge for EMS fees. Go from there, do some research on TLT.
Cause that is, we're gonna get that passed.
What's that?
If we're gonna change, I mean, why?
So we just we have an answer, but again, yes, back to your point, what is the bigger approach and how council wants to approach revenue, increasing revenue? Is it individual ballots on increasing fees or taxes, or we attempt to repeal that charter amendment? I mean, how does council want to improve that?
I would move to repeal that charter amendment. I've talked to League of Oregon Cities, I've talked to other places. It's an unusual amendment.
I think that's a much deeper conversation.
Right.
And
you asked
and we're gonna start here about 1 minute.
Yeah.
And, so,
I'll do
but,
some research.
and maybe reach out to LLC. They're a great resource for that.
Just out of curiosity, is this all something you guys should be having like on screen, or is this a?
It is.
discussion?
It is.
Oh,
It's just a pre-planning.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
It's follow-up from our budget meeting, so.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You want to adjourn this meeting now?
Yep, adjourn.
I move to adjourn this work session.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Emily Baker,
Aye.
Carol,
Abstains,
okay, Kathy,
Aye.
Keller,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mayor Cal.
For those of you online, we'll be turning this meeting off and restarting for our regular council.